Hey listeners, we're super excited to share a brand new way for you to connect with the Legally Speaking podcast. Introducing Fan Mail. Got questions about a recent episode, thoughts on legal careers, or just want to share some super positive feedback with us? Simply click the send us a text link in the show notes and your message will come straight to us. We can't wait to hear from our amazing legal community. Thank you so much for all your support from all of us here at the team. We really appreciate it.
The best people to hire are the pragmatists. Really, it's that pragmatism. It sounds so simple, but it's actually very, very difficult to identify. And in the legal world, it's really, really hard because everything's stacked against us. And this exists everywhere. This kind of completely unnecessary busy work and going around in circles on things. One person's common sense isn't another person's common sense. But coaching people and challenging people to simplify how they're communicating, how they're moving from A to B. We all have finite time. We're not charging by the hour in an in-house role. So we just want to make the maximum impact for the business possible.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Ross. Sam is the Chief Legal Officer at Remote, a global HR platform helping companies hire, manage and pay their team whilst competing in a modern global economy. He was previously VP, General Counsel at Remote, and has a wealth of experience of scaling legal teams for various high-profile businesses. Sam is passionate about using legal operations to create slick processes and actionable insights to deliver legal services. So, a very big warm welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Rob. It's amazing to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And before we dive into your amazing career and what you're getting up to for the legal world, we do have a customary icebreaker question here, which is on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law on the scale of 1 to 10 if you've seen it?
I haven't seen all of it. I've seen some of it. I would give it, in terms of a law firm, probably a 9 because that kind of the way that it kind of portrays the kind of officiousness, if that's a word, of the office life and kind of people posturing and positioning and making themselves look good and trying not to get screwed by other people. Unfortunately, that is kind of the reality in some law firms. I know that other law firms have, really amazing meritocratic cultures, but they're difficult places, right? Because you can really be exposed there. And the more money you earn, sometimes the riskier your job is and all sorts of things like that. So I would say that if I think about Suits, it's about a large part of it is about kind of who's got the power in any given episode or a given series. And so I think the in context of like the law firm world, yes, it's quite realistic. And then in context of in-house, very different, because in-house is a completely different job. It's a completely different universe.
Yeah, and I think you gave a really good answer. And with that, we'll move swiftly on to talk all about you. So would you mind, Sam, telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied English at university, mainly because I was kind of good at it. But I may have watched the DVDs in some cases instead of reading the books, which is why I didn't get into Cambridge. So apologies for that to some professors at the University of Birmingham. But I already had one foot in the workplace when I was at university. So I was really interested in getting into law. I wanted to work in tech law or music law because I also did music on the side. And I found a law firm called Olswang, which doesn't exist anymore. Now it's basically a room in another law firm, but it was a very, very well-established, well-regarded media and tech law firm. And I managed to get a training contract with them. I really liked the firm and what they stood for. They were quite entrepreneurial. The exercise that they had you do when you went for interview was about being an entrepreneur, setting up a cheese shop, which I really loved. So I enjoyed that part of it and was lucky enough to get a training contract with Olswangs, which I started in 2007. So went through the training contract with them, absolutely loved that experience, was actually just there with some old friends reminiscing around High Holborn in London the other week, looking at the pubs we used to go to and talking about all the all-nighters that we used to pull, working on deals and stuff. And so did that role, qualified into the corporate team and did like mid-size M&A deals. So I learned how to buy a business, learned how to sell a business, learned how to do due diligence, and that gave like a really good grounding in many different areas of law. And I kind of found that I was always more interested in what was going on the fringes of the deal. So I was like, oh, there's an interesting tax point here, there's an interesting employment law point here. I'm going to go literally physically downstairs to those lawyers in that department and ask them, keep badgering them and bugging them until I understood the issue, which was really annoying for them because they couldn't charge it to the clients. But that was kind of what it was like. I was always interested in what was going on around the main deal, which is obviously suited for a corporate lawyer who does need to understand a bit about everything. And then about 2.5 years into that, I wasn't feeling the transactional, like 100% transactional stuff the whole time. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the buzz of like closing a deal, but I was lucky enough to speak to a really, really good legal recruiter whose name is Marcia, and she sold me an opportunity to go and work for Barclays in their technology division. So Barclays in Canary Wharf, 30 floors of corporate mystery going on there, and on one floor, which is level 22, there was this floor of operations and technology people. And what they were trying to do, this is in 2012, they were trying to build like a little tech kind of innovation hub within Barclays. They were trying to engage with the tech community. They set up like accelerator programs. And so there was a table tennis table, which is really important. And you didn't have to wear a suit. And so it was kind of like a innovative hub within Barclays, and I got a job working as a technology and operations lawyer, and I was responsible for managing kind of legal risks around all of Barclays' overseas tech centers, so their call centers, their tech dev centers, and it was like a really good introduction to working in-house, because there was like 1,000 lawyers at Barclays and loads of impressive people to learn from. So it wasn't kind of unstructured, but it was still kind of more commercial and in-house versus a law firm. And I got to learn about international stuff because I was advising on all these overseas issues and international risks, like international data transfers and all that kind of stuff. Getting to work with colleagues from all the different parts of the bank, because I was working in a team called Ops and Tech, which was like a function that serviced all the different parts of the bank, like the investment bank, Barclaycard, retail bank, etc. And it was just a very, very exciting place to be, because there was a lot of money and a lot of interest in trying to understand what was going on in the world of tech. And it was before it was even called Fintech, but that's what it was. I was really lucky at Barclays to be able to get a secondment to the design and digital team for 6 months, where I got to do a totally non-legal role for that period, which kind of opened me up to, oh, wow, there's actually a way of earning money and doing a job that doesn't involve doing law. That's interesting. That's what these people do. They do kind of designs and customer experience stuff and user journeys and all that kind of stuff, which I found really, really fascinating. Even though I'm not a very sort of artistic person by background, I'm not very good at visual things. But I was inspired by what I saw and how those people worked and how they brought things to life through visual depictions of what they wanted a customer to be able to do 20 years from now, that kind of stuff. It was really, really inspiring. Then I decided in 2016 that I had kind of had enough of the big corporate world, and I was lucky enough to meet the PR team of a company called World Remit, which is now called Zeps. And that's a company that was venture capital backed, and they help migrants to send money home through a digital means. So kind of a competitor to the traditional like Western Union and MoneyGram and those sorts of players. So one of the new kind of digital remittance companies. And I was their first lawyer. So I was hired in 2016 under the CFO. I was sort of trusted to start the legal function from scratch. And I built that team up for like 3.5 years. Then went to another fintech company called Comply Advantage briefly. Then spent about a year doing some outside general counsel work for some early stage VC-backed companies, and then finally have landed in my current role, where I've been for just over 3 years at Remote, again, leading the legal team there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Remote and what you've achieved, but just want to pick up on maybe a couple of lessons there that I've observed, which would be great. I think going back to those days, like you said, at Olswang, being curious and wanting to know more and actually going knocking on the door, I think that's a really good trait to have, particularly as a young lawyer, if you want to get the best information, don't be afraid to go and ask and actually go and seek out some responses. Love that. And then you're also open to, opportunities. I always say, obviously, I'm a little bit biased being a legal recruiter myself, but one of the best relationships you can do is build a relationship with a legal recruiter. And you mentioned, Marcia there. I love hearing that when people have good experiences with people that make dream moves happen and actually, have a positive experience. I think that's a really good learn for anyone. Build a relationship with people, have good networks who can potentially get you in roles that are going to be really good for you in the future. And then you said also getting some non-legal experience. That's really important as well, and understanding the dynamics of business. And then from there, wonderful roles that you've been in and great experience along the way. So let's get to the present then. With remote, can you tell us a little bit more about how that happened? Because also, I understand remote's mission is to create opportunity everywhere, empowering employees to find and hire the best talent. So tell us more about remote and tell us more about your story.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing your homework, Rob. That's very impressive. You've kind of done the job for me. So I do love mission-driven companies. It sounds a bit cliched, but I love companies where I can really, really relate to what the company is trying to achieve. And also I really love companies that are solving global problems because that's just an awesome thing to be able to work with people across the globe and collaborate in that way. So I found out about the remote opportunity, actually, again, back to your point about sort of building a network, maybe is kind of a broader point about what you're saying. I actually had a relationship with a lawyer from one of the venture capital firms who were in one of the previous companies. We worked really well together, and she actually knew the CEO and she introduced us, and that's how I got the job. And so it was pretty much as simple as that. People give each other ratings, and hopefully she said some nice things about me, and then I met the CEO and we hit it off. So that's kind of how I got the job. Obviously had to meet several other people and go through a proper process as well. And I mean, I can't stop talking about how much I love the company's mission, because basically the idea is that it doesn't matter where you happen to have been born or where your family happen to live. If you have the skills and ability and ambition to work for X, Y, or Z company, you can get a job working there. You don't have to wait for them to kind of set up an entity over there or decide that they're going to open up an office there. You can just apply online via their website, and you can say, well, I've got these skills that you're looking for and I'm the right person for this job. And then somebody like Remote, through our employer of record product, can basically hire you and manage all your payroll, your benefits, your taxes on the company's behalf, and they don't need to worry about it. So it's a really cool idea. It's very clever. It's been going for a while, but it's still on a bit of an upwards trajectory in terms of that industry, and people don't necessarily know about it. When I was hiring internationally in previous roles, I thought that you had to engage somebody as a contractor. I didn't realize that you could do this employer of record thing. So that's really cool. And then what we're also trying to do is broaden our suite of products to be able to offer companies global payroll solutions. So where they do have like an entity in the country and they do have a presence there, it's a massive headache to sort your payroll out, to know how different collective bargaining agreements work in different countries, how maternity leave works in this country or that country. So you need, a payroll provider to sort that for you. It doesn't sound that sexy, payroll, but it's kind of interesting because you've got like HR aspects, you've got employment law aspects, you've got how do we deliver this service really, really quickly, really, really fast, really, really accurately to all of these customers, where payroll is probably the most important thing for any business owner, right? If you don't make payroll and you screw payroll up, all your employees are going to be up in arms and your business is going to fall apart. So that's why it's quite exciting, and that's kind of where the future of the company is going. And I'm lucky enough to lead the legal team, where we've got over 40 kind of lawyers and non-lawyers in the team from a whole load of different countries with loads of different backgrounds and expertise and experience. And also work on in the exec team, again, global team, and feel very lucky to be working with such a strong team there as well.
Yeah, and I love what remote stands for, and I like the fact that I always say we're in this hyper connected world now, particularly with the advancing of obviously technology and AI and the internet and all of that good stuff. But with remote, we're giving that talent pool that global opportunity, and I think it's super exciting, where people can get the jobs of their dreams and they don't have to uproot a family. Myself as a father, and the thought of maybe having to do that uprooting and upheaval and missing out on an opportunity, this could potentially be it is a game changer, and that's why I'm super keen to get you on. But let's stick in terms of your legal lane, because you're the chief legal officer. So what are some of the day-to-day responsibilities you have? I know you're touching on it there, and maybe just talk us through a typical day of a CLO.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, again, it sounds a bit cliched, but given the managing a relatively large team, I'm now at a point where I'm basically an escalation point for decision making. So, a lot of the advice that we give of putting in place things like policies, to decide whether we can onboard certain types of customers, whether we can onboard certain types of employees, whether there's a deal point on a commercial deal that we're doing that we need to close off, or there's maybe a privacy point that we need to consider in the rolling out of a product. So what's really, really important when you're doing that in a remote setting is real clarity of information. So coaching people in the team to present really, really clear facts and really, really clear context of what we're discussing. And then what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for a discussion on this, which is absolutely fine? Are you looking for an answer? Is it A or B or C? And then, I'll either decide that myself, or I'll bring it to the management team, or we'll decide that. I'm also really, really focused on metrics of our team, mainly around speed and efficiency, and trying to reduce the number of tickets that we're looking at, because we have a lot of customer facing exposure where customers are asking questions, and then legal is often the last place that a question goes. And what you don't want is for that question to go there and die in a closet somewhere and be forgotten, because everyone's waiting for the answer from legal. And also we are at risk of being the team that takes the longest to come back on something, because maybe we have to go to this council and maybe the customer doesn't agree. So we have to then speak to their council, and then it gets really, really complicated. And you've got a really, really long Slack thread or other messaging platform thread of debate. And so, as well as just being an escalation point, what I'm trying to do as well is instill really good working practice with the team, so that we're very crisp and we have competencies within our team around things like brevity, to make sure that we are being really, really efficient with how we're working. Even though we've got all this amazing expertise across different countries, we just want to make sure that we speak our customers' language, internal customers that is, and external customers. We don't overcomplicate stuff, and we just provide a really, really slick service to the rest of the business. I do a bit of corporate stuff as well when we're doing corporate events, because that's going back to what I did before. And I really like to go to events where I can meet customers and try to pitch remote to people as well. That's a really enjoyable part of the job. But the meat of my day is basically I'm on the messaging, I'm on Slack. There's activity happening the whole time. Some people get really stressed out by it. I have to admit, I get a bit of a buzz. Like every time something comes in, it's interesting, it's nuanced, it's layered. I get to use kind of all the experience I've had to date, kind of analyzing something quickly, sometimes using an AI tool to simplify it for me, and then just like get to make really impactful decisions that hopefully make customers' lives better, and help the team as well, and help the team progress and advance.
Yeah, and you touched on it there, and we will talk about AI because it's here. And I was at just recently the talent show, Talent Connect show, hosted by LinkedIn, the world's largest professional networking platform. And even Ryan, the CEO, was saying, how we have to embrace AI regardless of the industry you're in for good. But I want to talk about scaling legal teams and holding senior roles, because you've done that at a relatively young age. And I think
I'm 40 now. Come on, I'm getting on a bit now.
Yeah, you're knocking on a bit, exactly. So, you've obviously been able to achieve a super impressive CV. How have you gone about building teams and departments across various sectors? Any skills or tips you would give to others thinking about that?
The main theme that I found recently is that the best people to hire are the pragmatists. So, I was in a role previously where there was a big emphasis on universities and grades. And, I'm not going to lie. I want to be real. I'm proud of the grades that I got. And I'm also privileged that I went to a school that pushed me to get those good grades. But now I do think that I've started to see beyond that. And I've started to realize that there is not a necessarily correlation between academic success and success in business and success in the workplace. And really, it's that pragmatism. It sounds so simple, but it's actually very, very difficult to identify. And in the legal world, it's really, really hard, because everything's stacked against us in legal around pragmatism. And I try not to be too much of an a-hole about it when I'm calling it out to law firms, but this exists everywhere. This kind of completely unnecessary busy work, and going around in circles on things, and just not. And I'm not apparently saying common sense isn't a good idea, and I do respect that, because one person's common sense isn't another person's common sense. But coaching people and challenging people to simplify how they're communicating, how they're moving from A to B, and what is the purpose of this project? Why are we doing this? Should we be doing this at all? We all have finite time. We're not charging by the hour in an in-house role. So we just want to make the maximum impact for the business possible. And we want to articulate that in really, really easy to understand goals. So the people that I want on that journey are people who could just have that really simple conversation about what work are we going to do that really helps the business. And each day when people are doing that stuff, it's, is this thing that you're doing really helping the business, or is it just pointless, and should we just move on to the next thing? It's people who are willing to think like that I want to work in these teams. And it's not this is only appropriate, I think, for fast-paced scale-ups, this extreme way of describing it. But I think that in the theory applies to any lawyer in any team, whether it's a listed company or a startup or whoever, because I do think there is a huge amount of wastage in the industry. And that's not to say that I disrespect the practice of law and disrespect the great work that barristers do, and the fact that it's necessary to have 12-month cases in the High Court, because of course that's all important. But if you're talking about law in business, it's about being practical. And that can also involve really, really significant risks, and being brave enough to speak up and raise those risks and make sure that a project that's too risky gets shut down. Because as we saw, in various scandals that are happening, lawyers are going to work every day. They're spending 10 hours doing the work, but no one was brave enough to say, hey, you shouldn't do that, and I'm going to go to the chair of the board or whatever if you don't listen up. So I'm not one of these people who's kind of self-hating lawyer, because I think law in-house legal is a really, really important function, but we just have to be practical and pragmatic in how we do it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Clio, the all-in-one legal practice management software designed to help solicitors like you save time, stay organised, and deliver outstanding client experience. Clio is trusted by thousands of legal professionals worldwide, offering a user-friendly interface, seamless time recording, automated billing, and secure cloud storage, so you can manage your practice from anywhere. With Clio, you'll get award-winning support available 24/5 by live chat, phone, and email. So help is always there when you need it most. It's no wonder Clio consistently receives 5-star ratings for its ease of use and top-notch service. If you're ready to experience a better way to manage your practice, visit clio.com/UK to learn more and see why Clio continues to be the go-to choice for solicitors across the UK. Now back to the show. You have to be business savvy, and sometimes it's better to be clear than it is to be clever. Over pontificate about things, and really, what is that clear, simple message like you're talking about in simplification? And I think this also comes down to mission-driven companies. So we're delightfully sponsored by Clio, have a very clear mission to transform the legal experience for all. And everyone joining an organization needs to understand what that North Star is and what their individual contribution to that North Star of that mission is. And I think then that links back to the actions that you're taking. So like you're talking about there in terms of being pragmatic, you've joined this organization, understanding and buying into this mission. By taking these actions, that is helping daily, if not by the minute, to what we're trying to achieve. So I feel like, particularly in the scale-up industry and scaling teams, people who really buy into the mission, and that's why it's really important that you understand that and really get a buzz off that, or else it's probably not the right environment for you. And I love that you're articulating that in the legal sense as well, and what that is from a legal point of view. I want to talk about switching lanes. It's something I've done myself. I have taken, I have quite a large appetite to risk as a sort of entrepreneur. But obviously legal, sometimes people can be a little bit risk averse or take slower to make decisions. But you've decided to move from traditional finance at Barclays to, the global HR platform like Remote. How's your approach to legal strategy evolve across working different environments? And, have you found a benefit in terms of working across diverse environments?
As I said before, I've just been lucky to get all this experience, but I think that it did take a bit of gumption in the beginning to be willing to take that to make that move away from private practice quite early. There was still a bit of a stigma associated with that at the time, where people who were more conservative were saying, make sure you get 5, 6, 7 years of experience in the law firm before you jump. But I think that a career is finite, and you have to think medium and long term the whole time about what you really want to achieve. And luckily enough, I think I've been quite clear with myself about what my goals have been throughout this whole process. I think I got in my head the idea about becoming a general counsel many, many years before. And I had some really, really good advice from other GCs that said, don't do it too early. Don't start calling yourself a general counsel when you're not actually operating as a peer of the rest of the management team, because then you're going to do yourself a disservice. So I think I was just lucky that I had a clear path in my head about kind of what I wanted to achieve, and also why I thought I'd be good at it, and why I thought it would make me happy, and why I thought I'd be useful to organizations doing it. And I think it's kind of, if I were just to put it into words, it's kind of, a modern legal leader who's not afraid to kind of call out things where the business really needs some guidance on legal risk and understanding how important it is, but is also fundamentally a business person who really truly loves business and moving the business forward. And it's just such a privileged position to be in, because as the in-house legal team, you don't have the pressure of having to make sales and having to generate, leads for marketing. You get to have this much more holistic involvement. And I feel like in return for that, and in return for having that sort of trusted position, you do need to be able to just consistently show how you're adding value to the business. And yes, there are metrics that we've started to create, and they are quite useful. But fundamentally, it's about relationships, and it's about really caring about your stakeholders and really caring about them achieving their stuff. Which again, it's for the third time in our chat I've said it sounds cliched, but it's everything, right? It's absolutely everything. When you get a message from someone saying, the legal team really enabled us to get this deal over the line, and we're really, really grateful. It's simple, and that's what's really, really fun. And you get to feel like you're a part of the business, and then you get to understand business stuff. And I don't think that curiosity ever should leave somebody. So I actually had my one-to-one with my CEO just before this meeting, and I spent the first 15 minutes of it just asking him strategy questions. I was like, and what are we going to do here? And what are we going to do there? And why are we doing that? And why are we doing that? And then eventually I was like, well, do you mind that we're spending a good deal of our one-to-one with me asking you strategy questions? He's like, no, of course, you need to understand this stuff, and I'm really glad that you're asking. So yeah, it's a really, really cool kind of hybrid, this role between being a legal professional and being a business person.
Yeah, and you're obviously striking the right balance, and I love that you have that curiosity gene. And you mentioned it about relationships. I think I say it all the time: contacts are good, but it's the relationships that pay, and nurture and foster those relationships goes deep into those, and you'll get far better rewards throughout your career. You've obviously had some great mentors throughout your time as well, and really understanding what your contribution is to the business. I think I love that. And I think the one thing I would say is I love that you had a goal. And I would encourage people, if they haven't already, and I've had the pleasure of hearing him speak, James Clear, who's wrote the book Atomic Habits, who talks about 1% gains. He said, goals are good, but have systems in place. So replace goals with systems. So what is going to be your system to actually get the goal? Mm-hmm. And so, what are some of the habits you're going to start creating? Maybe it is you're going to be drafting, this and getting it reviewed by a mentor, whatever it is, but actually start putting some systems in place to ensure that you can achieve your goals. And obviously you've done that fantastically well to get to where you are. Let's look forward then, because you mentioned business challenges, and I love that you were challenging and asking great questions to the CEO, because you're clearly passionate about it. But businesses are going to become more and more global. So what challenges does this potentially create generally for legal services, and how should firms, in-house teams prepare to meet these potentially very high demands?
Well, there's a lot of red tape with regulations, and some regulations are great, and some regulations are it's difficult to see, or difficult to understand how to comply with them sometimes, even. And sometimes regulations are evolving and they're not quite where they need to be from a customer's perspective or from a consumer protection perspective or whatever. So I think staying ahead of of regulatory change is really, really important. Understanding how the law on X is different in France versus Belgium, and having a clear understanding of the whole landscape of the key legal issues and regulatory issues that affect your business. And that's easier with something like data protection because you've got GDPR and you've got CCPA and a couple of others. But in other areas, it's really, really complicated. And so then you might need to adapt how you service customers in different countries based on the regulatory environment and based on the how litigious the environment is and all that kind of stuff. So you need to have kind of in your head, or ideally on a very confidential document, what your risk appetite is for your product, and then how that maybe differs in different countries, and potentially be able to adapt your risk appetite, but also your practices and your policies and all that kind of stuff, because it will need to differ based on different countries, because that's the way the world is. But then obviously the ideal situation is to have your base level principles and what you really want to do, what you want to give to your customers, and try and keep that as harmonious and as consistent as possible. And so maybe a way of achieving that, as well as having your layer of compliance with different countries, is also to invest in public policy, which we're starting to do at Remote, because that can help to advance, this is why we think this thing should be easier. I can see someone in the industry has recently advocated for a single EU company that kind of throws away all of the complexity that happens where you have to, incorporate in many, many different EU countries, and it's all very complicated. And so having, I think, PR angle is really, really important as well, because that can help to advocate for what you're really looking for in terms of regulatory change and making things simpler.
Yeah, no, I love that. And again, great practical, tactical suggestions. Really, really enjoying the conversation. I know something you're very passionate about is legal operations. And we touched on AI, but I want to kind of ask a more direct question now.
Sure.
So what role do you think artificial intelligence and automation, I would bolt on, because I think that's equally important, will play in legal operations?
Well, every time I see one of these Slack threads where people are scurrying around trying to find the answer and trying to find what to do next, I think that represents an opportunity for a more structured answer and a more structured way of doing things. And of course, when you've provided loads of answers of something in the past and you've also got policies in place, that is a really, really good source of fodder for your next answer. And every time you're not doing that, you're missing a trick. So what we're really looking for is a system that ingests all of the good stuff, all the knowledge, all the wisdom, and spits out, this is based on everything that you've said so far, everything your team said so far, in the future, everything sensible in-house teams have said so far, whatever, here's the answer. And then our team just checks it, thinks about it, and says, yes, or yes, but X, Y, Z. And we'll be the Airbus pilots, which is a really, really important job. And every time an Airbus pilot walks onto a plane, they're flying the plane, being paid the salary, they're going to end up at the destination, they're responsible for the whole cabin crew. If something goes wrong, they've got to chuck the passenger off board. It's a really, really important job, but they're not doing much of the actual flying. But that doesn't lessen their role, does it? You don't walk on a plane and think, oh, that captain, whatever. You walk on the plane and think, wow, there's the captain. So, it's so exciting. There's going to be so much opportunity for us to get help in how we answer these questions and how we build up systems of knowledge internally. It will be as transformational as the internet was, but we'll still have equally as much of a challenge to get better and improve as we had before.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? I see, Jack Newton, CEO of Clio, heard from a keynote from him recently, and he said, treat AI as a legal force multiplier. And I love that, in terms of actually being able to boost efficiency, productivity, all of that good stuff. So let's dive a bit deeper then, because you are super passionate about legal operations, creating these slick processes, actionable insights to deliver legal services. Love it. What would be top 3 tips you would give to a law firm or maybe an in-house team looking to invest or expand their legal operations department in terms of maybe something practical you think would be useful?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, look at other departments and what they're doing in a very, very smart way to make the experience for their stakeholders better. Because a big part of legal operations is just how do you engage legal? How does legal operate? So look at some other teams that have done cool things in the area. So in our case, our IT team was way ahead and had already created an amazing bot and an amazing database of like how to get your IT queries answered. So we actually partnered with them, and they helped us to build, our first kind of the new version of our how to get help from legal service that we provide. So one tip is speaking to other departments. Another tip is to speak to your peers in other in-house roles, find out what they're doing. And there are some great resources in the tech community. There's Tech GC, which is now called the L Suite. There are networks in London. It's just a question of saying, well, this is my problem. This is what I'm trying to achieve. I wouldn't think like legal ops. I would think, well, what is it you're actually trying to do? Are you trying to improve how you do policies? Are you trying to improve how you use templates, how you review vendor agreements? So just think about like the top 5 things that you're really trying to transform. Are you trying to pay invoices in a smarter way? And then, I would set up like what are the projects that are going to have the biggest amount of impact, and think of solving those as opposed to here's my broader kind of legal ops strategy, which is a bit more challenging and a bit less easy to kind of identify with. So second tip is, come up with projects and lead with those impactful projects and get buy-in for those projects as well from stakeholders and other teams. And finally, I would say try to go along to some, actually some legal ops specific events, or read some literature about it, because it's very easy to immerse yourself in the stuff that I was talking about before, which is just like burying your head in the escalations. But only when you take a step back and you actually go and start talking to people and see what's going on in the community. I was at the Clock conference last week for a couple of days, which I found very valuable. And there is a danger of hanging out at conferences too much, and I do think that is a problem. Like, people do spend too much time with these things, but I don't think there's anything wrong in turning up to a conference, going to a couple of sessions, and then going and working on your laptop. Like, I don't think there should be a stigma associated with that. That's always what I do. I spend 3/4 of the day at a conference working and taking calls, because I know that it's not good use of my time to spend huge amounts of my day sitting at a conference. But I can physically go there, luckily, because I work remotely. I can take a bit of it in, and I can also get work done. So I think it's just about trying to balance that as well.
Yeah, and look, you're very pro, as am I, of sort of building your network, getting yourself out there, but also being efficient and productive with your time. You touched on it. I want to just ask a little bit more on the Tech GC network, because you are a charter member of that. So what is the network all about for people who might be less familiar?
Yeah, sure. So it's a network that was started in the US by some former lawyers that were comparing notes, and they wanted to organize themselves a bit better in terms of, giving each other recommendations on how to handle different problems within the legal team, which advisors to use. Has someone come across this piece of regulation before? How have you handled it? And it's just 20 times more valuable to read a discussion between GCs of how have you practically dealt with this issue, versus actually going to a law firm and they say, well, let me tell you A, B, C, D, E, F, and G about this issue. Any more questions? I'm like, yeah, I've got another question. What am I supposed to do next? So it's really, really valuable for that, from that point of view. And it works very well on Online Hub. And there's also in-person conferences as well. But actually, probably the most valuable thing about it is that online platform that they have, because it's very slick, and you can learn a lot about what other people are doing about similar situations.
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate for that, because you want to have diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, other people's views, other people, because that's just going to help shape you and then crafting your own judgments and career decisions, whatever it is you wish to take. And I guess before we look to wrap up, then, to get some sort of final words of advice for aspiring solicitors, what advice would you give to those interested in pursuing a career in legal operations and legal services?
If you want to start a career in legal operations, weirdly enough, I would say learn about law. So don't do a law degree, don't do a conversion course. Don't do the formal qualifications if you don't have to, or it's going to be too expensive. But just try to get a subscription to Practical Law. Try to understand from some mates who are lawyers or whatever what challenges they're seeing on a day-to-day basis. Try to evidence your curiosity, because I don't think it works if you're working in legal operations but you don't have a genuine interest in the idea that you're a legal services department, because that's what we do and that's what we're passionate about. So I think that's really important. And then the other one is I always say to kind of up and coming people is just try to get some more financial savviness, because you always need to put a number in front of pretty much every conversation that you have. If it's a budget request, if it's a policy change, if it's a new way of doing things, you always need to be able to quantify it with a number. And finance people are 127 times better than lawyers at quantifying things, whether it's got a dollar in front of it or whether it's just got a number in front of it. So just start to get more familiar and comfortable with the idea of quantifying things and numbers, and whether you have to go on a finance course or whether you just have to start training yourself to think more in terms of data and numbers versus just broad concepts. That will stand you in really good stead for legal ops, because particularly for legal ops, you need to be able to explain what you're doing in quantitative terms.
Yeah, no, love that. And again, thanks again for giving such sort of detailed and simple, actionable advice for our next generation. Look, this has been a blast, Sam. And if our listeners, which I'm sure they will, want to learn more about your career or remote, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to shout out any websites, any social media handles. We'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I'm not a social media guru. My posts are mainly like when I've checked into a hotel and there's something unpleasant in the room or something like that. So I wouldn't recommend following me on social media. But LinkedIn is an exception to that. Please follow me on LinkedIn. And our website is remote.com, which is a nice, easy one to remember. And very, very happy to hear from people and exchange ideas and exchange thoughts.
Love it. Well, thank you ever so much once again, Sam, for joining us today. It's been an absolute blast. So from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clio, wishing you lots of continued success with your career and indeed future pursuits and obviously Remote's mission. But for now, from all of us, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.